It was basically a day like any other day. I was driving out to Eastern Long Island, that's where we live, to go to a barbecue place with my then wife. We were at the end of our relationship. Our children were in high school preparing to go to college, and we were just trying to keep our relationship together. We had gone, as people do, we just drifted apart over the years, and our children were our focus. And so that's what we would do, is we'd go for a ride on my Harley Davidson and go out east and have some burgers or some wings and something, and just have a pleasant afternoon out. And so we had gone to this barbecue place, and on the way out, the traffic was backed up for miles. And so I waited in traffic for a little while, but then people started to go off on the side of the road and make a right at an intersection above, about a half mile down the road. So after a while of sitting there, I finally decided to do the same thing. And just when I was coming up to the intersection, a car made a left-hand turn, a truck, and slammed right into the side of my motorcycle, throwing my wife off the back, and I absorbed the full impact of the truck. And next thing I knew, I was on my back, and I was looking around. It was obvious some time had passed because there were emergency workers all around me, and I wasn't sure what was going on. And but as I tried to move and stuff, I realized I was seriously injured, and this day was going to be like no other day in my life. There was no way of going back. And then the next thing I realized is I was floating up towards the clouds, and I was getting higher and higher, and I knew something terrible had happened, and in my own mind, I was giving up to perhaps I was dying. I didn't see myself at all, but I saw the accident scene. And I saw the pieces of motorcycle all over, and the cars were lined up for miles. And I just kept on rising up and up. And just as I was about to go through the clouds, I started to come back down. And I got closer and closer. And then I realized I was actually in a helicopter, and I was landing at Stony Brook Hospital, one of the best trauma centers in the United States. It's a university hospital. They're miracle workers there. And I was on the tarmac, and they came and got me. And that's the last time I remember being on this earth for what seemed like an eternity. But it was about 3 weeks that I was in the coma. I had catastrophic injuries. My spine was broken, and they had to insert 2 steel rods in my spine to stabilize it. I had a traumatic brain injury. I had a shattered hip. My hip was all in pieces, and they had to pin that back together. Broken arm, broken leg, ribs. But the most serious is I had internal injuries, and I was bleeding inside. And they had to do several operations to stabilize me. Finally, they got me stabilized. And then the next thing is that my foot started to swell and was cutting off the blood. And so they had to do just miraculous surgeries. And then I was in my hospital bed. And but in my mind, I was in a different place, a place that I call between here and there. And it isn't where you go when you die, and it isn't here. It's kind of like an in-between place. And I have to stress is that I was 0 on the spirituality scale prior to this. I was a beer drinking, hot wing eating, motorcycle guy. I was a computer guy, but I lived a life. I've traveled all over the United States, and spirituality just wasn't my thing. I loved motorcycles, and I loved Harley Davidsons. I loved partying, and I often say, being a spiritualist guy now, if the guy who I was 10 years ago met Stevie today, he'd beat the crap out of him. Because it was such a change. But so I'm in my hospital bed, and in my mind, I'm in this other place. And the first place, it was a place where time didn't exist. And that's a very important concept. And what I mean by that is here time. What is time? Time is the ticking of the clock, the sun rising and falling, appointments in the future, pots boiling on the stove. There's none of that there. What time is measured is by your experience, your spiritual growth, you don't, that's the only thing that changes, is that how you see yourself and how you see the people around you. And so like in this instance is that I began to see people that I knew as older people. I started to see them as young people. And then I was beginning to recognize them. I might have saw a young person as an old person. And then I was beginning to recognize them still. And so then I started to see a man as a woman, not as anything else but a true bio woman. And I saw the same thing as a man, as a woman as a man. And so I was seeing all these different people in different shapes and forms. And what I was being able to taught to see is the spirit inside everybody, that part of you which doesn't change. And by seeing people that I knew in different forms, I was beginning to see what part of them is that part of you that goes on forever. You know, you have a different body, you have you're not a boy, you're not a girl, you're not a father, you're not a son, you are a spirit. And that was the first thing as I learned in that space. I learned to recognize the spirit in everybody and everything. At this point, I saw nobody who was dead. Everybody was alive in my life, at least all that I knew. Some of these people I haven't seen in years, but no, they were all alive people who were in my life. And I was being shown how to see the spirit in them. And so I had a life review, but first I had to have my awareness raised. And so the first thing as I was taught is to recognize spirit. And then the next thing is that I began to see spirit in everything. Once I was able to feel the spirit in people, I began to feel the spirit in animals, in the stars, in the sky. Everything about us has a spirit. And it's just a core principle of life, is that we are all connected in a real way. And so first I was taught the spirit, and the next things I was taught is that everything has a spirit. And then finally, I was taught that we all are like cells in a body. We all, just like your cells in your body, make up you, and there's a consciousness of you. All of us make up a consciousness, and that's the consciousness of the Creator. The Creator and the creation are one. We are all part of the same universe. There is not two. The people, all of us, we all are part of the Creator themselves. And that's who we are, and that's our destiny here on earth. Our destiny is to learn and to grow, and to, through that awareness, is to have spiritual evolution. And as we evolve as spirit, the whole universe, the whole world, everything we know evolves as well. The universe, the Creator, and the creation are one. So in this place, those are the first lessons I learned. I term this as being taught the language of the universe. And it's kind of like a way of understanding. And once I learned this language of the universe, then I went through this life review. And so I would relive my life with my understanding of my new spirituality, my understanding, and plus living it for the second time. I had new insights into my experiences. And so then when I was done with my life review, I felt so much better. I felt like all of a sudden, a lot of things that happened to me in my life, I wasn't upset about anymore. And the happy things were still happy, but I started to have no shame, no regret, no animosity towards anybody. I began to feel at peace because the things that happened to me made sense then. And then what happened is I went and had another life review. And I'd go through the life review, and then at the end, I grew spiritually each time. And I became more aware, and I became more blissful. People often ask me, were there pretty colors and other things? Other people experienced that. I did not experience that. What I experienced was beautiful bliss based upon my awareness growing. And all of a sudden, think how you would feel if you weren't never worried about anything. If you didn't have any bitterness towards anybody, or no one had bitterness towards you, all of a sudden, everything's okay. And so I went through that life review. I couldn't tell you how many times, but what drove the process wasn't a consciousness beyond myself or beyond us driving the process. It was the need. As long as I kept on learning from this life review, I would keep on going through it. And this went on for what seemed like forever. And every time I started it, I knew that I would be better by the time I was done. And that was a very important lesson I learned, because later on in life, that enabled me, even now to this day, if I find a fault in myself, I'm excited about it. You know, my love of my life, Kathy, she always says you're nuts because that as soon as I find something wrong with myself, I say, wow, it's a wonderful opportunity for improvement. And that's really the way I look at it now. All of a sudden, like that ego part of you that pushes back on things, it's not there anymore. I'm excited. I mean, I don't know how to explain it, but I love learning and growing now, and that's what that life review taught me. More than just the lessons that I learned, the peace that I found, it was that it made it okay to continue once I came back to Earth, is to be okay with learning and growing. It's a wonderful thing. And then another thing that it taught me is your life experiences are everything. Some of my worst experiences in life were the things that I learned the most from. It really is. And so experiences are the only thing you can take with you. So live your life. You know, we're not here to be spirits on the mountain and gurus meditating all day, although meditation is good and all those things, but you're here to enjoy life, to learn. When bad things happen, don't let bad things happen, but when they happen, accept it and find some peace in it, find some knowledge. We all have terrible things happen. And that's another very important lesson I learned, is the reason for life is to get as many experiences you have, because those are the things of value. When you do your life review, those are the things that are going to drive your spiritual growth.